These people were unlucky to cross the path of crocodiles, and the encounters ended in horror. The tragedy of a couple fishing in Australia, a tale of courage amidst crocodile terror. In northeastern Australia, in 2005, 60-year-old Barry Jeffries and his wife were in a boat fishing on the remote Normanby River in Queensland. This is an activity they had done and enjoyed many times before. But on this day, it soon turned into a true horror story. They were chatting with each other as they fished, and were unaware it would be their last trip together, when suddenly, without warning, a massive saltwater crocodile jumped out of the water and sank its teeth in Mr. Jeffries' arm. He tried to fight it off, but in seconds the animal had upturned the boat and dragged him underwater. Barry's wife was thrown into the murky waters at the same time. It was all so sudden that she went under the water and struggled to surface back up again. And when she was finally able to get up through the water, gasping for air, she saw her husband locked in a struggle for his life. Amidst the chaos, she fought to stay afloat, the violent thrashing of the crocodile creating waves and terror around her. But once she did, she was fighting to stay above the water so that she could get her breath. The crocodile was right beside her too, and still had Barry in its jaws. The animal continued to roll around and around in order to drag him under the water to drown him. How do people find the strength to survive such a nightmare? What thoughts race through their mind when death is inches away? In extreme danger, the human brain shifts to survival mode. Time dilates and every decision becomes crucial. She didn't know how long she was there in the water, but love propelled her forward. The weight of the horror she witnessed threatened to paralyze her, but she did eventually manage to swim to the banks of the river, her body still trembling and her mind still in shock. She was safe now, but the complete horror that she had just witnessed made her freeze for a long time, until she was eventually able to run to the car and drive to a nearby ranger station for help. What happened to the crocodile that changed their lives forever? Authorities launched an intensive search for the animal. The following day, they located and euthanized a crocodile basking near the attack site. This crocodile was believed to be responsible for the tragic incident. But how do experts determine if they've captured the right animal? What evidence links a specific crocodile to an attack? Wildlife experts study the behavior of crocodiles nearby. An aggressive crocodile will display territorial signs and agitation. Days later, a human thigh bone was found near the site where the incident happened. DNA tests were able to confirm it belonged to Mr. Barry Jeffries. This is the story of 40-year-old Dr. Dave Hogbin, a family man whose final act was one of unimaginable courage. The wild, untamed rivers of northern Australia are places where beauty and danger exist side by side. For most people, this is a paradise that is worth exploring, but for one man, it became a horror story. This is the story of 40-year-old Dr. Dave Hogbin, a family man whose final act was one of unimaginable courage. Crocodiles have roamed these waters for over 200 million years. They are apex predators, silent and calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But could anyone ever predict that a simple walk along the riverbank at the Annan River Bridge would turn into a fight for survival? In August 2023, Dave Hogbin and his wife Jane were on a dream camping holiday. They were exploring nature and the local wildlife and creating memories with their 3 young boys. But this trip, meant for adventure, would soon turn into a true horror story. What happened next would take less than 30 seconds, but it would change everything for them forever. It was early afternoon and the sun gleamed over the river. Dave and his wife Jane strolled along an established path on a 16-foot, 5-meter-high riverbank. But then, without warning, the earth beneath them collapsed, and Dave slipped down into the muddy water. Jane reacted instantly. She lunged, reaching out, grabbing Dave's arm, trying to pull him back. But the bank was steep, and the ground was wet, and she was slipping too. And then, the water beneath them moved. A shadow. A force of nature rising from the depths. A massive crocodile, nearly 16 foot, 5 meters long, lunged out of the water and locked onto Dave's arm. When Jane saw this, she was horrified. But what happened next will haunt her for the rest of her life. She was still doing her best to hang on to him, but she herself had started to slip down the bank too. She saw desperation in her husband's face, until his eyes met hers. It was in this moment of sheer terror for the both of them that she knew he was saying goodbye. Because when Dave realized she was also falling down towards the water as well, it was in that moment he knew he had only one choice. He looked into Jane's eyes and, with one final act of love, he let go of her hand. She screamed in shock at what he had just done, and then in an instant she saw the crocodile move away, with her husband in its jaws. For a few seconds she lay still on the riverbank, looking at the now still water. She knew she had to move, but her mind could not work out how to do it. She saw her 3 young sons in her mind then, and knew she had to return to them alive. So she was finally able to maneuver herself back up the slippery bank. Once she was clear of danger, she was able to run for help. The Queensland police and rescue units carried out an extensive search for Dave Hogben. Witnesses were able to tell them that the crocodile that swam away with the man had a distinctive white scar on its snout. A few days later, a helicopter search found the crocodile in a creek 4 kilometers upstream from Crocodile Bend. Wildlife officers euthanized the animal responsible and cut out the remains of David. Dr. Dave Hogben's story is one of heartbreak, but also heroism. A man who, in his final moment, made the ultimate sacrifice. His story is a reminder that nature is both breathtaking and unforgiving, and that love, even in the face of terror, is the most powerful force of all. 2 men were out snorkeling on an island off the coast of Australia. They did not know that a crocodile was hiding in the water and was waiting for its next victim, and that was Russell Harris. He was 37 years old and was from Nottingham in Britain. He and his wife now lived on the island of Crocodile in Australia. He was working there for Gemco, a mining company, as a technical services superintendent. He had only started his new job there 5 months earlier. They enjoyed days out on Picnic Beach, which was very popular with all the workers at the mine and their families. That particular day, Russell Harris and his wife were with another couple enjoying their weekend together. Russell and his friend got ready to do some snorkeling in the water, while his wife and the friend's partner stayed on the sandy beach, just 100 meters away. None of the people involved were aware of the horrifying events that were about to unfold. Russell's American-born wife and the friend's partner were enjoying the beach as the 2 men ventured into the waters, blissfully unaware of the true horror story that awaited them all. Both men spent a while enjoying looking at all the amazing wildlife in the shallow waters. But around 2 p.m., the men became separated near the rocks, only about 20 meters from the shore. While the other man had safely returned to shore, there was no sign of Russell. And as more time passed and Russell had not returned, the others grew concerned. So the authorities were called, and an extensive search was carried out involving a twin-engined aircraft, local Aborigines, and mine workers. Tragically, on the next morning, Russell's mutilated body was discovered in shallow waters at the mouth of 8 Mile Creek, over a mile from his last known location. After his body was recovered, he was flown to Darwin for an autopsy. It was later confirmed that the injuries on his body confirmed he had been bitten by a crocodile. In 1987, Faye Ginger Meadows, 24, was an American tourist from Colorado. Ms. Meadows and her friend were swimming under the King's Cascade waterfalls in northwestern Australia. They were on a ledge and the water was only waist deep. They were part of a group of tourists who had taken a trip there on the luxury yacht, the Lady G, and this was moored in the mouth of the river. As they were enjoying themselves in the water, they were suddenly caught up in a horrific fight for their lives. A crocodile appeared out of the water and grabbed hold of Ginger. Her friend looked on in panic and terror, but was able to help her by throwing a shoe at the crocodile. This action startled the animal and it let go and went back under the water. Ginger tried to scramble to safety, but the crocodile quickly resurfaced and grabbed her again. This time the crocodile was able to hold on to her, and it dived under the water with Ginger, and it swam away with the young woman tightly clasped in its jaws. The police and other rescue services spent 2 days looking for her body. They eventually found what remained of Ginger. Her remains were put in a body bag and transported up the river on a 23-foot rescue boat. The boat had traveled about 9 miles on the river when suddenly things took a strange twist. The boat was attacked by another crocodile, which jumped out of the water and grabbed the body bag in its jaws. In a matter of seconds, it was ripped open, but the crew managed to scare it off and keep hold of the body. They were nervous about more attacks, so turned around and went back to anchor in the St. George Basin. They waited for a much larger boat that could take them safely on the river. A young child is attacked in front of her family. In 2012, a 7-year-old girl was playing near the water's edge at a remote outstation near Maningrida in Australia. All of a sudden, a saltwater crocodile lifted its head out from the water. It ran out of the river, opening its huge mouth, and went towards the child. Her family were right there beside her as this happened. They watched on helplessly and were horrified to see the animal lift the child between its teeth and then vanish into the depths of the water. After an extensive search by the rescue services, they found the 14-foot crocodile the next day. The animal was killed, and the body of the child was recovered. Visitors to these places are advised not to go within 5 meters, 16 feet of the water's edge. This is because of the risk of crocodiles jumping out of the river to drag people in. But it is very easy to forget these safety warnings. The tragedy at Cahill's Crossing, near Crocodile National Park in 2017, a 47-year-old man, Mr. Rahakbao, was attempting to cross the river at Cahill's Crossing in the Northern Territory of Australia. He was with 2 women at the time, and they had ignored the warnings about the dangers of crocodiles. As they continued to wade in the water, a saltwater crocodile of about 11 feet came beside them. It went for the man with its huge jaws and dragged him under the water. The 2 women managed to make it across the river and raised the alarm. Eyewitnesses described the terrifying event and said the sight of him thrashing in the water and screaming would haunt them forever. His body was found 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles downstream on the following night. They also found the crocodile responsible and killed it. Cindy Waldron's visit to her friend went terribly wrong. Cindy Waldron, 46, from Lithgow in New South Wales, was walking with her friend, Leanne Mitchell, 47, on a beach in Australia. It was a calm night and the water was only waist deep at Thornton Beach, so they decided to go for a swim. They were only a few minutes in the water when Cindy screamed that a crocodile had got her. Leanne grabbed hold of Cindy and tried to drag her away from the animal, but the crocodile was too strong and she had to let go of her grip. She then ran to a nearby store and raised the alarm. Rescue and police crews descended on the area. Cindy Waldron had traveled to visit her friend Leanne because she had just successfully completed her cancer treatment. Leanne was treated for grazes and shock at the Mossman Hospital. A rescue helicopter was also sent to look for the woman and crocodile. Eventually, a crocodile was caught and killed, and it was found to have contained human remains. Her father and sister flew to Cairns to be closer to where she spent her final days. They made an emotional visit to Thornton Beach to say goodbye to her. Her father told reporters, "We need to be here and cry on the beach." Bill Scott was taken by a crocodile in front of his family. Mr. Bill Scott, age 62, was on a fishing holiday with his wife, son, and daughter-in-law in Australia. It was the 7th of June 2014, and they were at the Crocodile National Park at a waterhole named Bill Dean Billabong. They were Australians and had taken camping trips in the country for over 35 years. His son had grown up doing the same with his parents and loved these trips too. As they settled down in the campsite, they were all sorting things out for a comfortable stay. Bill was on his small boat, which was moored on the bank. He was sorting out their fishing gear and checking everything was in order. After he finished cleaning the inside of it, he went to the rear of the boat to empty a bucket of water over the side. He was looking forward to the days ahead and was relaxed as he got on with these jobs. Everyone else at the camp were also in a good mood as they anticipated a wonderful holiday. Suddenly, the quiet and relaxing scene turned into horror. Out of the water right beside Bill's boat, a huge crocodile leapt out beside him. The animal then clamped its jaws around his body by grabbing the man's shoulder and chest. With one quick motion, the crocodile then flipped his body into the water. His family were horrified at what they were watching. And in a few seconds, Bill Scott was being dragged away by the crocodile upriver. They sought help from the authorities and a search was launched. The rescue services finally managed to locate 2 animals which they believed might be responsible. So these were shot and killed and their bodies opened up. They were correct, as one of them had his body inside its stomach. 6-year-old child is eaten by a crocodile in Malaysia. In 2016, 6-year-old Cecilia Julian Intik was playing near the water on the Sungai Tatau River in Malaysia. She was with her grandfather and sister at the time, and they were enjoying the peaceful river. But everything became terrifying in an instant, when a huge crocodile jumped out of the water and grabbed hold of the child. Her grandfather and sister watched in horror as the massive crocodile attacked and dragged her underwater almost immediately. It took the emergency services 2 days before they managed to locate the animal. They had found 2 enormous crocodiles, measuring 17 and 18 feet long. They euthanized them and opened up their stomachs. Cecilia's body was found in one of the animals. Halima Rahakbao's final moments. 54-year-old Halima Rahakbao was a woman belonging to a village community in Indonesia. She would provide food for her family by tending to her garden and collecting shellfish and clams. She went to the river to wash the family's pots that they had used for a meal earlier. When she failed to return home later, some of her family and other villagers began to look for her around the area. To their utter horror, someone found one of her sandals and part of her leg in the river, so they reported this to the elders and the police. When a further search was conducted, the police actually found the crocodile still in the act of eating the woman's body. They shot it and brought the animal on shore. It was cut open, and the remainder of Halima's body parts were recovered. Brett Mann, 22, is attacked and eaten by a crocodile. In December 2003, 3 friends had gone quad biking beside the Finnis River, which is near Darwin in Australia. Sean Blowers, Ashley McGough, both 19, and Brett Mann, 22, loved to go biking in the bush. When they had finished their ride, they went near the banks of the river to wash off the mud from their clothes. But Brett slipped in the mud and was swept away in the river. The others swam in to rescue him, but as the boys were guiding him to the banks, a large crocodile grabbed Brett and disappeared under the water with him in its mouth. The 2 teenagers were horrified at what had just happened. They panicked and tried to get out of the water, but they lost the ability to swim because of what they had just witnessed. They scrambled to a big tree and climbed up its branches. The crocodile came back without Brett. It circled around the area watching the teenagers up in the tree. They were up there for 22 hours. It was a terrifying time for them, and they were afraid they would not be able to hang on. They had to make sure that neither of them fell and slipped into the water. Eventually, they were rescued by a search party, but the body of Brett Mann could not be found. The last terrifying moments before being eaten by a crocodile. 26-year-old Sean Cole ignored the warnings about the danger of these animals. Sean was with a group of his friends celebrating at a birthday party in August 2013. The party was being held at a camping ground on the banks of the Mary River. This was 65 miles, 100 kilometers from Darwin in northern Australia. Visitors are told not to go in the water and to stay away from the edge of the banks. This is because of the dangers lurking in the Mary River. It is known to have the greatest amount of saltwater crocodiles in the world. But Sean and one of his friends were having a good time. They had drank a lot of beer. And the 2 mates had ignored the many warnings not to go in the water. And foolishly, they decided to go for a swim in the river. There were witnesses on a boat who saw what happened next. To their utter horror, as they watched the 2 men swimming in the calm water, they could see a saltwater crocodile of approximately 5 m, 16 feet long, sliding up beside them. What happened next seemed like it was in slow motion to the onlookers, but also at the same time has happened extremely fast. They were barely in the water for too long when the crocodile attacked Sean. It grabbed him in its jaws and then pulled him underwater. The animal could be seen going up and down in the water, rolling its body in order to drown the young man. There were many other witnesses who also saw this horror play out. As the animal was rolling around in the water with the man's body in his jaw, his friend managed to swim back to shore safely. Other witnesses said they had seen the animal swimming upriver with his body in its jaws. Mrs. Frida Pedersen was camping with her children nearby when they saw the attack happen. She told reporters that they were all horrified and would never forget what they saw. They carried out a search for the man's body for days. This involved the Water Police, Territory Response Group, and the Northern Territory Emergency Services. The authorities killed 4 crocodiles before they found the remains of his body weeks later. At least his grieving family were able to bury him. They were told it was safe to swim there. Isabel von Jordan, 23, from Tutzing in Germany, was with her sister Valerie and 8 other European tourists. They were taking a tour of Crocodile National Park, Australia in October 2002. They went to swim in the water because they were all hot and sticky. But this waterhole was well signposted with warnings about the dangers of crocodiles. When they asked the guide about this, they were told to ignore them because it only had freshwater crocodiles in it and they were not dangerous. Why he told them it was safe to swim in the water is unknown. As the 10 people were enjoying the swim in the cooling water, there was suddenly a terrible screaming coming from one of them. Valerie and Isabel were slowly swimming beside each other and chatting. Valerie later told the authorities that out of nowhere a crocodile jumped out of the water and grabbed hold of her sister in its huge mouth. She was shocked but could do nothing to help because it all happened so fast. She saw her sister being dragged down under the water by the animal. She was crying when she told them that it was only then that Valerie stopped screaming. Everyone else managed to get out of the water unharmed, but they were all shocked at what they had heard and seen. The rangers recovered Isabel's body still in the mouth of a 13-foot, 4 meters saltwater crocodile. There were also 8 other dangerous animals in the water as well. So the other tourists were very lucky not to end up dead too. The tour guide was very experienced and knew the area very well. He had taken tourists into the Crocodile National Park for the past 13 years. But his neglect caused the death of this young woman. The tour guide, Glenn Robles, was later convicted of causing her death by making a dangerous omission. He received a 3-year suspended sentence. Fatima, 45, was eaten by a crocodile. In 2020, a woman was fishing with friends in a river in North Kalimantan, Indonesia. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a crocodile jumped out of the water. It grabbed hold of Fatima, 45, in its mouth and dragged her under the water. It happened too fast for anyone to help her. People watched in horror as the crocodile swam off with her body. Fatima's head and other body parts were later found nearby. The crocodile was caught the next day with her arms and legs found in the animal's stomach. The Northern Territory is estimated to have more than 80,000 saltwater crocodiles, which can grow up to 23 feet, 7 meters long. Both saltwater and freshwater crocodiles were hunted to near extinction in Australia. But their numbers have increased since they became protected by federal law in 1971. Jeremy Doble, 5 years old, was attacked by a crocodile. He had been playing with his 7-year-old brother Ryan in Australia in 2009. They and their dog were at the back of their house, which was beside a flooded mangrove swamp, when the attack happened. His brother saw the crocodile grab Jeremy and swim off with him. After a frantic search, the police found the animal responsible. The child's remains were found in the stomach of the crocodile in the flooded Daintree River. A girl, 7 years old, is killed while swimming. The child was swimming near Gumarung Bang Outstation in the Northern Territory, Australia in 2012. She was with a group of children and one adult. They were shocked when the man was suddenly attacked by the animal. This area has not been troubled by crocodiles before, and the water was presumed to be safe. As the children scrambled to get out of the water, the animal let go of the man and grabbed the child under the water. The people who witnessed this tried their best to find her in the water. After an extensive search, the police located the crocodile and killed it. When they opened its stomach, they found the child's remains inside. She screamed for help but was dragged under the water. In 2009, 11-year-old Bryony Ann Goodsell was out playing with her younger sister, 7-year-old Bethany, and 2 friends in Darwin, Australia. It was a hot day, so they decided they would go for a swim in the nearby creek. But when they got bored with this, they went further down the water. This area was part of the Black Jungle Conservation Reserve. There were signs of no entry, but the children decided to go anyway. As they swam around there, the other children were suddenly aware that Bryony was screaming for help. When they looked towards the child, they saw her body being dragged under the water and the tail of a crocodile splashing about. They ran for help, but when it arrived, there was no sign of Bryony. The remains of Bryony Ann Goodsell were found the day after she was attacked. A 12-year-old boy, Dujuan Janjul, was eaten by a crocodile. He was swimming with his cousin and 3 other friends at Magella Creek, behind the Mudgeonberry Outstation near Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory in Australia. They all lived at the nearby Aboriginal settlement. The children did not realize that there were crocodiles in the water. They were just out for a bit of fun in the river. Out of nowhere, the animal attacked another boy, his cousin, Jaden Janjul. This child was able to fight off the crocodile because he was a bit older at 15. But when it stopped going towards the boy, it suddenly jumped on Dujuan, and with one bite it was able to drag him under the water. There was no chance of saving him because he was being drowned very quickly. The other children got out of the water and ran for help. Police and park rangers launched a search, with helicopters and airboats also being used. They managed to shoot 2 crocodiles, but when they cut out their stomachs, there was no sign of the boy. His cousin Jaden had severe wounds on his arms and needed stitches. Parts of his body were later found on the banks near where the attack took place. The animal ripped the child's head off. This boy, 8, Julio Otero, was fishing with his family when he was attacked. The crocodile jumped out of the water and grabbed him. The large crocodile lunged at him, shaking him so hard that it ripped off his head. His parents could do nothing to save him because it happened so fast. They were horrified at what was happening right in front of them. The crocodile was still holding the child's body in its mouth when the police arrived. But they refused to shoot the crocodile because they are protected animals in Costa Rica. The family had moved there from their native Nicaragua 4 years earlier to work on a banana plantation. The parents were heartbroken and are now planning to move back home with their other children. The boy's father said, "The hardest thing for my wife was seeing the crocodile float away with my son's body." The crocodile was seen to come back to the surface more than an hour later, still holding his child's body in its jaws. He was snatched off a boat and into the crocodile's mouth. He was 10-year-old Milhasan Suraping. It happened in 2019, off the island of Balabac in the Philippines. The child was in a boat with his two older brothers. Without warning, he was dragged out of the boat in the crocodile's mouth. His father and the rest of his family searched for him overnight. They recovered the head and leg of the child the next day. The rest of his body was later discovered by a fisherman in a nearby swamp. An 8-year-old boy is killed by a crocodile. Dimas Saputra was eaten by a 26-foot crocodile. It happened in March 2023 in East Kalimantan, Indonesia. The child was fishing with his father, Subliansya, on the riverbank. Dimas got too close to the water's edge. He was dragged into the water in seconds by the crocodile. The animal then tossed the child in the air and swallowed him in one go. His father jumped into the water and began hitting the animal. He kept punching it to try and make it release his son, but the crocodile kept swimming and was too fast, so it got away. After an all-night search, the animal was captured. The body of the child was cut out of its stomach, still in one piece. 2-year-old girl is killed by crocodiles in Cambodia. In July 2019, a 2-year-old girl called Ram Roth Neri was attacked and eaten by crocodiles in Cambodia. Her parents owned and ran a crocodile farm on land near Siem Reap at the back of their house. The child slipped out of the house unseen as her mother Naiz was looking after her newborn baby. The girl's father, Min Min, began looking for the missing child. To his horror, he found his daughter's skull in the enclosure where the crocodiles were. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.